The effects, including cumulative effects of pollution on health, the natural environment or general amenity, and the potential sensitivity of the area or proposed development to adverse effects from pollution should be taken into account. My second concern is the visual impact breath will have. It is enormous. The highest building is 42 metres high. This is 5 times higher than an average house. This plant will dominate the landscape and it will feel like we are living in an industrial estate. I'm quite sure this would be the start of the degeneration of the local area, as it will not appear to be a desirable place to live in or visit. Why would you build a huge industrial plant in a densely populated residential area? I am actually a realist, and I don't expect to live in some chocolate box village utopia with zero pollution, but we live metres away from what is an existing air quality management area. As I've already stated, 2 of our 3 children suffer from asthma, which in all likelihood is as a result of the existing pollution in the air of this area. We love this community and want our children to be part of it, but there comes a point where you can no longer justify the detriments to their health, and should this plant go ahead, our home would be approximately 3 kilometres from the site, and our son's school will be approximately 1.5 kilometres away from it. They will be breathing in the emissions of this plant every second of every day. Like many other families that are part of this community, we will probably leave. My final observation is about the inquiry itself. Of all the people who have volunteered to speak so far, not one person, apart from the appellant, has said that they are looking forward to Brett coming to our area. Who actually wants it? We call this country the mother of democracy. We have voted for our councillors and our members of parliament, all of whom have listened to and properly represented the community by opposing this incinerator. Where is the democracy if the wishes of whole communities are ignored for the financial gain of a very few who are from other parts of the country and don't have to live with the adverse health effects of their own decisions?
Thank you. Dr. Paul here? Nope. Okay. Keith Martin, please.
Good morning. My name's Keith Martin and I'm a resident of Davyhulme. I'm quite active socially in the area in that I play golf at the local Davyhulme Park Golf Club and use the facilities at the driving range here. My wife and I have been residents of Davyhulme for 54 and 38 years respectively, and I would like to share the following observations with you. In the old days, the 50s, 60s and 70s, the area suffered from severe air pollution due to the close proximity of Trafford Park Industrial Complex, with its concentration of heavy engineering and chemical process operations. The old Mountain Power Station was also a major contributor to the overall air pollution problems, together with the Shell complex at Carrington. The introduction of the Rivers Lane sewerage works did nothing to dispel people's impressions of a dirty, smelly and polluted neighbourhood. With reference to the sewage plant, the Environment Agency representative regularly and happily told us that not to worry because the obnoxious odours we could smell throughout the district were not from the effluent but the chemicals being used to process it. Well, that's okay then, isn't it? As far as the residents were concerned, it didn't matter what it was that smelt, it just stank. The extension of the M60 motorway resulted in the demolition of many houses in its path and massive increases in the motorised traffic of the area. The net result being, yes, again, you guessed it, more air pollution. Part of the neighbourhood, which is directly adjacent to the proposed biomass incinerator, was and still is classified as an air quality management area because of its poor air quality. And as we know, the air quality today is still outside the accepted legal limits laid down by regulation. Poor air quality, as we've heard many times during this inquiry, has a direct bearing on the health and well-being of people subjected to it, particularly the very young and the elderly. During the 70s and 80s, major improvements to air quality were implemented as older industrial plants were closed down and replaced using modern technologies. Barn Power Station was demolished and the smells from the sewage became almost acceptable. Having worked 40 years in engineering design at a large chemical plant in Trafford Park, and this is the one that had a large emission last week and resulted in us all being advised to keep our windows closed, I witnessed firsthand the improvements in process and technology which resulted in fewer emissions and better overall air quality. I also witnessed some of the mishaps and near misses that occurred in the normal day-to-day operations of the plants, not to mention those hush-hush incidents which occurred during long, complicated commissioning activities. It was also a fact of life that once the initial permits and approvals were obtained, it was much easier to introduce additions, modifications and extensions to the operations of the plants, which otherwise would not have been sanctioned. The introduction of one of the largest shopping malls in Europe, i.e. the Trafford Centre, has had a number of impacts on local areas. It has provided a magnificent shopping, sport and leisure experience which attracts thousands of people daily into the area. It provides hundreds of job opportunities, revenue and support for the local community and many local businesses. However, it also produces massive traffic congestion within the local areas, the level of which had hitherto never ever been imagined. Standing traffic in gridlocked motorway access and exit roundabouts, which result in local feeder roads being blocked in all directions, are experienced on very, very frequent occasions. This in turn produces air pollution on a par with or in excess of that of the old days. Trafford Council, to their credit, have spent large sums of money on the regeneration of the locality, particularly Urmston Town Centre. This to transform it from a small rundown township into an energetic, thriving business community, one that encourages local traders and businesses and invites investment from external sources. New housing has been built and efforts made to provide a safe environment where families will choose to settle for the future. It has to be stated, however, that massive incentives have been provided, like 95% mortgages to buy new houses, to encourage people into the area. The introduction of the Peel Energy Waste Incinerator will have a massive negative impact on the whole neighbourhood and on the aspirations of the people who have invested their time and efforts into making Urmston, Davyhulme and Flixton attractive and safe places to live and to work. The sheer size of the proposed complex will dwarf the existing surroundings. It will emit pollutants which are associated with serious health conditions and thus increase the air pollution problem. The size of the chimney stack is dictated by the location of the nearby Old Barton Airport and is considered by many, including the recognised experts, to be far too low to safely disperse the emitted pollutants. Rather than encouraging people and businesses to set up home in the area, the incinerator will deter new business opportunities and result in families leaving the area for good. My own son and my grandson will certainly move away together with the rest of the family. My wife and I will be following their lead. Peel Energy would have us believe that the proposed incinerator will only increase the existing air pollution by a negligible amount. We have heard their representatives glibly use the term insignificant. They also use the term insignificant to describe the feelings, fears and perceptions of local people. How dare they be so patronising? The dispassionate way they, on Peel Energy's behalf, have tried to undermine the efforts of the Breathe Clean Air Group and Trafford Council as they defend our right to breathe clean air is quite staggering. I wonder how dispassionate they would be if the boot were on the other foot, if they needed to defend the health and well-being of their children and grandchildren against some large profit-seeking conglomerate. No increase in air pollution, however small, in an area where background air pollution is already above acceptable legal limits, can be classified as insignificant. I believe that nowadays one of the main contributors to the air pollution in the area is the traffic congestion at junction 10 of M6 motorway, M60 rather. Thousands of vehicles daily head to and from the traffic centre complex and add to the concentration, which is very heavy, of north and southbound traffic. The proposed incinerator will attract a fleet of lorries to and from the plant, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, each entering and exiting at junction 10. You don't have to be a traffic expert to predict the chaos that will ensue. As I mentioned earlier, we already have gridlock conditions with standing traffic for large portions of the day. It has to be said that I do not object to the biomass incinerator being built, and I accept that it will produce electricity in accordance with the requirements of green policy and legislation. My only concern is with the chosen location of the complex. It should be built in a non-populated area and not one that already suffers from severe air pollution and traffic congestion problems. Design compromises have been made, chimney stack, untried technology, etc., in an effort to shoehorn the plant into a location that is plainly unsuitable. No private individual or business can be allowed to ride roughshod over the local governing body and destroy a community purely for commercial reasons and financial profit. National governments and local councils have a duty of care towards the people of the community. They have a responsibility to provide a safe environment for people to live and to work in. Local businesses and commercial enterprises, and I include Peel Holdings and Energy in this, operating in the area also have a statutory duty of care towards their neighbours. Trafford Council have met their responsibilities by listening to the concerns of the people they represent and unanimously refusing permission to build the incinerator in the proposed location. Peel Energy are completely ignoring their responsibilities by pushing this appeal against the wishes of everyone in the area. If, by some travesty of justice, permission is granted to build this incinerator, Peel Energy should not assume the opposition action will cease. The Breathe Clean Air Group could very well decide to provide their own continuous air monitoring regime around the plant and campaign for the plant to be shut down if acceptable levels of air pollution are exceeded. The strength of feeling demonstrated over the past 2 weeks will increase dramatically as more people see the monster growing in their midst and will make this option a very real threat. This is a threat that Peel Energy should not dismiss lightly. I've been here every day since the inquiry began, and I've been very impressed, Mr. Richards, by the way you have conducted the proceedings. It can be easy to put clarity of thought into the extremely confusing legal toing and froing between the witnesses and the legal counsels. Mr. Kingston could very easily convince us all that the Pope is a Muslim. My contention is that the main thrust of these proceedings is not to be found in the legal ramifications or the interpretation of technical submissions. The most important issue is that public concerns are both real and perceived, and they worry themselves to death about the health and their well-being. My impression is that you are a fair and honest man. We, the people of Davyhulme, Brewston and Flixton, are relying upon you to make representation on our behalf, to ensure that the national government fulfills its responsibility to us. Please do not destroy my life and that, and that of my family. To this end, Pure Energy's appeal against our planning committee's decision must not be allowed to succeed. Thank you. Oh, he is a Muslim.
I don't think I'll cross-examine him to that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Okay. I understand Dr. Ball, you've arrived now, so would you like to come in, please? Good morning.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's not a problem. Just have to reorder a bit. Right.
I don't know whether you got my statement.
I haven't, but if you can leave a copy.
To Liam.
Well, actually, I've had it, I think, previously, but
Yes.
If you can still leave a copy, that would be helpful.
Right. Well, I'll just give a bit of my background very briefly. I'm a retired senior lecturer in environmental and analytical chemistry from the University of Salford. I'm currently the coordinator for the UK for British Mass Spectrometry Society in the area of special interest in environmental monitoring and the use of mass spectrometry in environmental applications. So I have quite a lot of knowledge generally of environmental monitoring over a period of about 25 years. I've worked with the Environment Agency when they were the National Rivers Authority and then changed over to being the Environmental Agency. So I've got quite a lot of knowledge of how the Environment Agency works and what they're involved in. My major concern is in the monitoring and detection regime for the BREP, and I'm going to concentrate on analysis and instrumentation. At the outset, I think that the instrumentation that's on the site is not quite state-of-the-art. It's not bad, but it isn't good enough. I think there is a need to look carefully at how good the monitoring systems are, what the detection levels are, there's one or two words I can use: detection, positive identification, and quantification. I'll add a further word: accreditation. Now, there are state-of-the-art facilities available and not too high a cost in the public domain, and there are very good environmental monitoring companies in the area of chemical analysis. I appreciate that the consultant group for the Pure Energy Group are an environmental engineering group. I didn't get the impression that they were chemical analysis consultants. And I can be corrected on that, but I feel that that is my perception. What should the instrumentation be capable of? Well, first of all, it should be capable of detecting at levels below the recommended levels for which are recommended by the air quality directives. there's no way we should be in a position where we can't monitor as much as possible of all the emission from that stack. So, if we're going to consider Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, we can monitor the 10 gases that are needed to be monitored at the levels required. Regarding the actual whether there is a system in place which will monitor continuously, I'll come on to that later. So at the moment, I would argue that the instrumentation should include mass spectrometry. And if it doesn't, why doesn't it? The reason for having mass spectrometry involved in the detection system and for monitoring is in the positive identification and the availability of very extensive mass spectral databases for monitoring all compounds, whether they're in small levels or they're at high levels. So we can get, to a certain extent, reasonably sophisticated information with Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, multifaceted for 10 gases, and we can use databases based on that. If we have a backup to that for organic chemicals, we only have gas chromatography with a flame ionization detector, then we have problems. Because a flame ionization detector is quite sensitive. It gives a peak on a chromatogram, and we can identify that by referencing to a compound. So if we take benzene, for instance, we can analyze benzene. We can get a reference compound for benzene. We can get a retention time for that compound. But what happens if we're going to low levels? The problem is FID is not sensitive enough. So you need mass spectrometry. Also, what about a false positive? That means two peaks coming together. One's benzene, one's another compound. They go the same molecular weight. How do you get over that problem? Well, mass spectrometry at high resolution will get over that problem. What is the cost of the instrumentation to give you the full suite of instruments that you require for monitoring the stack properly with high integrity to very low levels? The cost I put is between £100,000 and £150,000, which is about 0.2% of the cost of the plant. I'm not sure what the exact cost of the plant is, but the figure that was I seem to have in my hand is £70 million. So I thought you could get very good mass spectrometry instrumentation for that sort of, for about £100,000 to £150,000. So I'm saying that at this point I have to be convinced that the instrumentation in place is good enough, and I'm not convinced. So at the end of all that, I say the instrumentation on site should have the capability to detect potentially hazardous pollutants well below the statutory limits required, so that there is confidence in the detection, positive identification, and importantly, quantitation of the target substances. The proposal to have infrequent monitoring off-site of some important pollutants is not acceptable, or is wholly unacceptable, because there will be no safety checks on a day-to-day basis of the quality of the emission, and no way of detecting spiking in the levels, e.g. sporadic increases of a pollutant in the emission, which will require the facility to be rapidly and urgently shut down. So that's my first little piece. How long have I got?
Well, I start when you weren't here to limit it to about 5 minutes. So,
5 minutes.
So you could,
Well, I'll go very
you could
quickly.
sort of summarise that would be.
That was my overall general.
That's your key point, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Except I need to address the CEMS system, which I don't know whether it's in place or not. The continuous emission monitoring system. Now, if I look at Chapter 3 of Volume 1 of the Environmental State of Biofuel Energy, and I look at the diagram of the actual plant, and I look for the filters, I find that after the raw effluent gas effluent, there is a filter system, and then I look towards the stack, and I'm looking for the CEMS on the stack. Now, in that diagram, there is no evidence of a CEMS on the stack. And there's, in the text of Chapter 3, there is no indication of a CEMS. Well, the CEMS is the Continuous Emission Monitoring System. It's available from Thermo Fisher, the Netherlands, Model 70, multi-gas analyzer, and alongside of it, it's got an FID detector for organics as total organic carbon. That means all the organics are analysed as a total organic carbon component. It doesn't tell you what they are. It doesn't tell you whether they're very high toxicity compounds, or it doesn't tell you whether there's benzene there or dioxins or anything like that. It just gives you total organic carbon. So it tells you that in the emission there's some carbon-based compounds. So I'm not convinced that the BREF has got a continuous monitoring system of the quality that I would advocate, which is manufactured by Thermo Fisher, who have 25 years experience in this field. I think I missed out Chapter 12. I wasn't going to say a word about Chapter 12, but in a nutshell, it's a very good, extensive survey of air quality using a lot of data from the surrounding area. And at the end of the whole thing, I can just say, regarding the emission from the BREF, it's conjectural. It's not yet built. We don't know how much emission, what the emission levels are going to be. You can't model it. The only way you can model it is to build it and look at the profile of what the emissions are. You can make assertions all day about other information, but I don't think you're going to get a real model for the emission. The other thing that this is the last part. The other thing I was concerned about was, it relates to FICNA, which I'll come on to, but it also relates to the Environmental Agency. The Environmental Agency have what is called MCERTS, which is the Monitoring Certification Scheme, and July, version 3.4, July 2012. So the big buzzword, as far as I'm concerned here, is accreditation. How good is the accreditation? As far as I can make out, there is no accredited laboratory with MCERTS accreditation linked in to Peel Energy. Now, this is a system for testing chemical emission, continuous emission monitoring systems for gaseous particulate and flow rate monitoring. According to BSEN 15267-1, there doesn't appear to be any accreditation information stated or direct or indirect of an indirect nature. There are very, very high quality groups in the area of Manchester, I taught the boss back in the 1960s. Some of the top quality people in the country are down the road. One of their subsidiaries is expert and has MCERT qualification. Right, I just turned to FICNA, which is an add-on, which wasn't in this, but I did find out. I looked at the website of FICNA, and I looked at the accreditation for ISOQA 14301 and ISO 9001. I looked at the accreditation certificates, which are there in PDF format for environmental engineering, and everything looked all right. I looked at the dates, and the expiry dates were August the 8th, 2012. Presumably this is an oversight, unless certification has not been renewed. Therefore, the question to be answered, is FICNA currently accredited or not in the area of environmental engineering? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this is very
No, I don't need to cross-examine, sir, but perhaps most economically done by drawing your attention to Mr. Otham's rebuttal proof, which is SO4.
Can you just wait? Can you give them to Michelle at the back? Michelle, they're all distributed. And can you just wait while Mr. Kingston speaks?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Otham's rebuttal proof, SO4, section 7. Core document 67A, section 3.5, and schedule 3. Where I think we'll find these matters addressed, but I don't need to ask you questions about them. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have been cross-examined by a QC before. So
thank you very much, Mr.
It was a great pleasure.
Thank you. Then June Snowden, please. June Snowden here? Doesn't look like it. Joe Burgess? Good morning. Again, if you yeah, actually that's helpful. Yeah, okay. If you can make sure you give copies to Michelle Cody so she can distribute. Thanks. Yeah. So I know I don't need to write it down. So if I don't take notes, it'll give my arm a rest, and but you'll know that I am taking notes of what you said.
Thank you. Right. First of all, thank you, Mr. Richards, for allowing me to speak. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jo Burgess. I have lived in Davyhulme for over 40 years, and I have raised my family here. I am now enjoying the pleasure of watching my children raise their families here. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a widow, and founder of the Breathe Clean Air Group. Firstly, I would like to explain how my initial opposition to this plant came about. My late husband was an analytical chemist. In his early career, he was employed by a large chemical company in the laboratories, where he worked with some dangerous chemicals. Companies didn't understand then how dangerous some of these chemicals actually were, and strict controls of exposure were not in place. Over time, as more knowledge about the dangers became apparent, the regulations for handling these chemicals changed to become much more stringent. My husband was a fit man, didn't smoke, ate well, ran marathons, and played lots of different sports. But at Christmas 2002, he was diagnosed with an aggressive bone marrow cancer and was given 6 months to live. This disease has been linked to some of the chemicals which he handled. I wouldn't want anyone to go through what we as a family went through. My point is this: the cautious approach to handling these substances was not adopted and it was already too late, until it's already too late. The authorities allowed exposure and only changed the exposure regulations once it was too late for many people, including my husband. You may be able to see the parallels with this situation we are facing with BREP. There is an overwhelming body of evidence that implies that very serious health effects may ensue from the pollutants from the BREP incinerator. Even the HPA is conducting a study into some of the health impacts of incinerators, which suggests they don't currently hold all the answers. Whilst we wait for the regulators to catch up, plants such as BREP may be built, and the game of Russian roulette is played with lives once again. Our lives, our children's lives. This view is also shared by Dr. Thompson and Dr. Anthony from the British Society of Ecological Medicine, who have written 2 reports on health impacts of incineration. They stated, this is the historical fact that regulators have consistently and repeatedly underestimated the risk of pollutants from toxic chemicals. This has been true for asbestos, lead, DDT, PCBs, dioxins, and CFCs. Often, it has taken decades for the regulators to acknowledge these risks and ban these substances. I wholeheartedly believe this to be the case with the pollutants from BREP. These doctors also raise the point that the HPA should not provide reassurance when many pollutants are not monitored and the health impacts are not known. They state the Health Protection Agency should therefore qualify their original statement. It would be far more accurate and more honest for them to state, we believe that incineration contributes very little to the concentration of monitored pollutants, but unfortunately we have very little idea what those concentrations are because most of the time they are not being monitored. In addition, we have no knowledge of the concentration of hundreds of other unmonitored pollutants, although we are well aware some are dangerous. In the absence of this knowledge, it follows that it is not possible to make any assumptions about the safety of incinerators. I'm not here today to criticise the HPA. I simply wish to demonstrate why I personally do not accept their opinion as gospel truth, and why I hold strong doubts about their apparently clear-cut position. I have not been left reassured by their comments about BREP. And yes, I am still hugely concerned about the impact of this incinerator on the health of the local community. As we know, many of the serious medical conditions that could develop take years to manifest themselves. In these circumstances, it is therefore appropriate to apply the precautionary principle and act in the most cautious way to avoid unnecessary risk to a densely populated area, which any impact would be experienced by a large number of people. Based on this alone, in my opinion, the Brep incinerator should not be built. Brep is an incinerator with a midget chimney. On the 12th of June 2012, in a meeting between 6 representatives of the Environment Agency and 8 members of the Breathe Clean Air Group, Simon Holbrook from the EA said that ideally the chimney stack should be 60 to 100 metres high to disperse the pollution better. This short chimney of 44.23 metres is because of City Airport. The needs of the airport and the residents cannot be met, and therefore it is an inappropriate site. The elevated M60 is the busiest stretch of motorway in Manchester and the 3rd busiest in the country. Since 1998, Trafford's annual traffic volume has increased at a rate beyond both Greater Manchester and the national level, causing more pollution with all the standing traffic that happens twice a day, all day, at Christmas time and sale times at the Trafford Centre. Diesel is a known carcinogen, say the World Health Organization. Diesel equipment critical to the plant's operation will add significant pollution not only at the plant but on the roads. The children exposed to all this pollution is a great concern because of their lungs and immune system are not fully developed. Some of the local schools, Highfield Primary School, Kingsway Park Primary School, Barton Clough Primary School and St Anthony's Secondary School are all right on the edge of them and will be near and downwind of Brep in an air quality management area. 86 more schools are in the surrounding area. Can this be considered a suitable location for a polluting incinerator? I am fearful of what may become of our pleasant town when I read about the case at Port Talbot in Wales. Here, the air pollution levels already over the legal limit. A biomass plant was approved with lower levels set out in the EA permit. Does this sound familiar? Yeah. However, once it became apparent that the plant was unable to meet these low levels, the operator applied for and was granted permission to increase the pollution it emits. It is no surprise that Port Talbot also has one of the poorest health profiles in Wales. Urmston is a leafy suburb, popular with families, and I do not want to see our area degenerate and face this situation, which I believe will be the case if Brep is allowed to pollute our town. It is even more concerning that the temperature at which Brep will burn waste, 850 degrees centigrade, will be too low to destroy the dioxins. The World Health Organization states on their fact sheet entitled Dioxins and Their Effects on Human Health that proper incineration of contaminated material is the best available method for preventing and controlling exposure to dioxins. The incineration process requires high temperatures over 850 degrees centigrade for the destruction of large amounts of contaminated material. Even higher temperatures, 1000 degrees centigrade or more, are required. the last line is quite important, for the destruction of large amounts of contaminated materials, even higher temperatures, 1000 degrees centigrade or more, are required. These dioxins can enter the food chain. The area surrounding the BREP site is residential, and many people grow their own food in their gardens. There is also many allotment sites across Trafford and Salford, which lie in close proximity to the BREP site. The HPA have recognised the consumption of locally grown food as a key exposure pathway to dioxins that are produced by the BREP incinerator. This is yet another toxic pollutant which BREP will release, which we do not want in our air or in our homegrown produce. Again, who would want to live in an area where eating the food from your own garden is a risk to your health? Despite setting down roots and hoping to stay in the area, my daughter and her family have stated that we have no choice other than to move out of the area if BREP goes ahead, along with many young people I have spoken to over the past 2.5 years. Who would want to bring up their children in the shadow of an incinerator where we know so much about the potential risks? Furthermore, people that exercise in a polluted area are also at risk of detrimental health consequences, and we have many local sports facilities. Salford Regs Rugby Club, David Lloyd's Racket and Health Club, Chill Factor are all within 600 metres of BREP site. Again, I must ask, how can this be considered a suitable location for a polluting incinerator? We already face air quality in our area, weaving alongside and through our town, which means we should be striving to improve the air quality. Is this being taken seriously? What steps are being taken to reduce the pollution in our area? Other developments have been approved in our vicinity, including a methane plant on United Utilities land, 5 gas engines and flare stack on United Utilities land, a paper mill at Carrington, an 850 megawatt gas power station at Carrington, as well as several developments which will increase the pollution from traffic, including a hotel at Junction 9 of the M60, an office block, Junction 10 of the M60, a supermarket, Junction 10, and recently operating a conference centre and Salford Reds Rugby Stadium. As far as I can see, little by little, more and more developments are being approved which only worsen the air pollution. One insignificant impact at a time. We need firm action to protect the community, and this must only mean BREP must not be approved. I would also like to make the point that people in Urmston are intelligent people, not sheep, with easy access to solid resources of information about incineration on the internet. Most of the people we have spoken to have not relied on the information shared by the Breathe Clean Air group, but have simply used it as a starting point for their own research, and they have formed their own opinions. People have even joined our group after doing exactly this and being terrified of the consequences of sitting and doing nothing. Technology is moving fast. Better technology is now available. Brett should use the best available technique. We don't need it, we don't want it, it's the wrong site, it's the wrong technology. Thank you. Mr. Richard, could I please, I have a paper here that I've come across and I would like to submit this morning.
Thank you.
And it's cancer on mortality in town.
Okay, well, can you circulate that via Michelle Cody? Thank you very much. I think what we'll do is take a break now.